Hi everyone, and welcome to Seakeepers Voyages of Discovery. I'm your host, Katie, and I'm especially excited for our interview today as we explore one of my favorite animals. Corals are fascinating creatures that often get mistaken for plants, but they are actually colonial animals. Picture a sea anemone stuck to the ocean floor, squishy tentacles waving in the current, and a small oval-shaped mouth at the center. Now imagine 1,000 tiny sea anemones stuck to a cement pole, and we have almost made a coral. One main difference is that corals create a calcium carbonate skeleton that all these mini sea anemone-shaped bodies, actually called polyps, grow from. These polyps depend on tiny single-celled algae that live within the tissues of the coral. These algae photosynthesize and provide vital nutrition to the corals while gaining a safe habitat out of the water column. Stony corals are born with these algae in their cells, and they would die without the nutrients provided by the algae. While coral bleaching isn't our focus today, it's a major issue facing coral reefs. With increasing ocean temperatures, the algae within the coral tissues become stressed and flee, causing the corals to turn white. This is coral bleaching. The chances of recovery after bleaching are low. An estimated 25% of all marine life, including over 4,000 fish species, rely on healthy coral reefs for survival. The decline of coral reefs would impact the entire marine ecosystem, from invertebrates to reef fish and apex predators. Right now, 85% of the world's coral reefs remain, but a silent threat looms among them. Since its discovery in 2014, stony coral tissue loss disease, or SCTLD, has been devastating coral communities across the Caribbean and beyond. This disease affects over 20 species of stony corals. Scientists are racing against time to understand and combat this epidemic, as it poses a grave threat to the very foundation of our ocean's health. Today, we have the privilege of speaking with researchers from the Perry Institute of Marine Science who are at the forefront of the battle against SCTLD. Senior scientist Dr. Valeria Pizarro and research technician Megan Fountain are tirelessly working to unravel the mysteries of this disease, from its causes and transmission pathways to mitigation strategies. We're also joined by Captain Davis Alford of Discovery Yacht Andromeda, who made this research possible and has carried on a passion from this expedition to raise awareness about SCTLD in the Caribbean reefs he calls his backyard. Thank you all so much for being here to chat about your expedition. Let's get into some introductions.
Thank you. My name is Valeria Pizarro. I'm a senior scientist at the Perry Institute for Marine Science. I'm the manager of the coral program. I'm originally from Colombia, and I've been working on corals and coral reefs for more than 20 years, and that is actually what I do.
My name's Megan Fountain. I am a research assistant on the coral team, so I work under Valeria. I'm from the Bahamas, and I've been at the Perry Institute for almost 3 years now.
Hey, good morning. Happy to be here, everybody. My name is Davis Alford. I am a captain of sailing vessels normally, and I had the pleasure of working with the PIMS group and scientists twice in the Bahamas last season when I was captaining a sailing vessel Andromeda that is in the International Seakeeper Society Discovery Yacht program. So thank you for having me again.
Of course, thank you all so much for joining. Dr. Pizarro, can you tell us what the Perry Institute for Marine Science is and where you all are located?
So we are an NGO, and what we do is we do science in coastal marine ecosystems that are usually all the ecosystems that are close to the coast, including mangroves, seagrass beds, coral reefs, and others. We do research, and we provide usually government the tools and the information that they need to develop policies, conservation and management policies. And we do as well research to help other scientists to try to conserve and manage coral reefs and other ecosystems.
And Megan, can you tell us what stony coral tissue loss disease is?
So stony coral tissue loss disease is one of the newer coral diseases. It's also one of the deadliest because it affects over 30 stony coral species that are found throughout the Caribbean. It was first found in Miami in 2014 and has since then spread to many countries, including ours, throughout the Caribbean.
So this particular expedition that you all did with Captain Davis on board Discovery Yacht Andromeda, this was to study stony coral tissue loss disease, is that right?
So we did two, as Captain Davis said. One was in Andros, and that was actually just to understand how spread was the disease. The other one that we did was in Abaco, and that one we went to this really nice reef that it's there, that is called Sandy Key, and we treat corals. We knew that the disease was already there. We wanted to treat as many corals as possible, and having the opportunity to go on this vessel was amazing because we were just so close to it that we were going very early and doing three dives a day. So it was really good. So we did two with different objectives.
What is the treatment for stony coral tissue loss disease, or you all call it SCTLD? What does the treatment for that look like?
So the treatment, it's a paste called base 2B, which is just the kind of like the distributing agent that helps to put the antibiotic, which is amoxicillin, into the tissues of the coral. So we mix 200 grams of base 2B to 25 grams of amoxicillin, and we kind of mix that into a paste for about 10 to 20 minutes. And then once it looks nice and mixed, we then take it down in some syringes and apply it.
Do you have a certain rate of effectiveness for this treatment yet, or is this something that you're still doing the research on?
So we know that brain corals and star corals are the ones that kind of the effectiveness of the treatment is the best. So it's between 80 to 90%. For other species like the pillar coral, that is a very important coral that is dying very fast, the effectiveness it's low, especially because the disease just kills the coral very quickly. So it depends on the species, and we focus on everything, right? But the truth is that we can't save just so many. So we try to apply to the large corals that have more living tissue, etc.
So Davis, you got to get a little bit of firsthand experience with this. Is that something you had seen throughout the Caribbean before? Was this tissue loss disease?
The SCTLD, yeah, definitely. It is unfortunately, I won't say running rampant, because I think that I should leave that to the scientific professionals to make that assumption. It is common to the eye. And even in other locations where I had guests aboard doing dives or snorkeling or something, they'd ask, what's up with that? They would always reference coral bleaching and stuff like that, because that's what you hear a lot about in the headlines and whatnot. And I didn't know the severity of it or as much detail as I do now until I was able to come into contact with PIMS and their experts. So, through proxy, I am now able to spread the unfortunate word about SCTLD, which, raising awareness about it is part of the ability to combat it, hopefully, from what I gathered from them as well. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And how did you and the Andromeda become involved in this research with PIMS?
A partner and I had previously purchased a vessel over in Greece, and I had signed that up to be a discovery yacht, and we were doing some refitting to the vessel and planning on bringing it back to the Caribbean and whatnot. And I was able to get in touch with Tony Gilbert through that process. And then when we did kind of circle back around to see if when they found a place for that particular vessel, my partner and I changed plans, and we were aboard Andromeda, which is owned and operated by Barton and Gray Mariners Club. It was their first sailing vessel. And so we were brought on to captain that and kind of help build their sailing program. I said, well, we're actually in the Bahamas now, and we're on this boat Andromeda. And Tony started scratching his head and stuff, and he knew that PIMS was looking for opportunities to conduct their research and do what they needed to do in that area. And then we also, had the tank compressor aboard, which was a big plus for them, having to do multiple dives a day with multiple people and everything. So it really, fit very well. And luckily, Andromeda had some lull in our sailing plan for that season. And, I pushed really hard with the powers that be in order to have this great opportunity to help the marine systems and promote what PIMS is doing, as well as what International Seakeepers Society is doing, and promote Andromeda in good faith as well.
It sounds like really good collaborative science, and then a good way to spread that to the general public as well. I think that's something that, as scientists, we kind of have difficulty with, is communicating the science to people in a way that makes it understandable. But yeah, I'm sure just seeing the infected corals, that can be a really hard thing to see, but it's a good way to spread that awareness. Megan, what did a typical day on board Andromeda look like when you all were doing this research?
So, a typical day was, if we didn't mix the treatment the night before, we would wake up, mix some treatment. Davis and the other captain who was on board, Devin, would, help with some breakfast for us, or just put out something, which was an added plus. And then we'd head out on the little rib for our first dive, spend about an hour or so there, and then either Davis or Devin would have came back for us, come back, and then we hand over tanks to them. They would be refilling tanks. We would get some more tanks, switch out our gear. If we needed to mix more, we would mix more, head out again, come back, the same thing. And at this point, we'll probably have lunch. And then same thing again. We do this 3 times because we try to fit a minimum of 3 dives a day. And then we'd come back, we'd clean up, we'd hand all the tanks over again, clean up the gear, clean up our materials, and then refill the syringes, mix some more treatment so we can have everything ready for tomorrow. Have dinner, which is always a great time because it's like a little nice community. And then we kind of like disperse off into our little cabins and end the day.
That sounds like a great day. So you're fitting in 3 dives each day. About how long is each dive, and what's your average depth?
So where we were at Sandy Key, our depth was about 25 to 30 feet, depends on where you are. There are some shallower parts as well. I would say it depends on what you're doing. So we'd also have to do some photomosaics. If you're doing photomosaics, then you're going to probably spend about an hour because you're swimming constantly, and that burns a lot of air. And if you're doing treating, if you're just kind of slowly swimming along and treating, then you can spend, I'd say, up to sometimes 80 minutes. And we all kind of just pop up one at a time. If majority of us has popped up, then we would try and find our other teammates, because we keep with the buddy system, and then everybody just heads back at one time.
Are these treatment sites that you go back to repeatedly over time, and you'll kind of assess how things are progressing?
Yes. So especially with Abaco, we do have some treatment sites there, and with Sandy Key, we try to go back at least every month, if not every month, every other month. Field work is a logistical nightmare sometimes. But yeah, we do try to go back as quickly as we can just to keep up with the data, see how the corals are doing, and then also to take more photomosaics to keep our data active.
Yeah, and maybe to add to that, Katie. So coral diseases are not like our diseases that you can get well. Like coral disease will kill a coral. So we treat corals, and what we can do with this disease is we stop the disease. But if the coral can get reinfected, as you can get like a cold many times, it can get reinfected. So what we do is we try to go back to treat as many to treat the corals again, to check how they're doing. But then in many cases, we will have to retreat corals that we treat the first time. So that is one of the challenges with this disease, is you don't really cure a coral, you just stop the disease from spreading.
Is this disease heat dependent at all? Like, I know we see a lot of coral bleaching exacerbated when temperatures get higher. Is SCTLD similar at all?
No. So with the SCTLD, it's a little complicated because it doesn't behave exactly the same in every location. So with the marine heat wave that the Caribbean had last year, we had coral bleaching all over the place, and that was on the news all the time. What we saw, at least in the Bahamas, was the disease, like the abundance or the number of colonies that were infected were very high before the bleaching, but during the bleaching event, you kind of see the disease numbers going down. But in other places, like in Florida, what they saw is when the corals started to bleach, this disease was just like kind of exploding and just like having more and more colonies infected. So we know it's not related to the temperature, because there have been many studies and they have already proved that it's not related, but it behaves differently. So you just have to know where you're working and what to do, to make decisions.
So just looking at a coral, how can you tell whether it's infected with SCTLD or whether it's experiencing bleaching?
Maybe we have to start, like, corals are animals, right? And they do have like a living tissue, but inside that living tissue, they have an algae that is called zooxanthellae, and those are symbionts. They live within the coral. And that relationship is very important for both, but especially for the coral, because they do need that algae to survive. The algae provide a lot of the nutrients, and if they don't have the algae, they will die of starvation. So when you see a coral that is healthy, it has a color, and that color, 99% of the time, is because of the algae. The algae that lives inside, like they can be about a couple of thousands of these tiny algae living in 1 square centimeter. So that's the color. When the temperatures start to increase, what happens is that the algae has a problem with doing photosynthesis. So we have what is called like free radicals coming out. And that is a toxic substance to the coral. So the coral is like, no. You're producing something I don't like. So they just expel this zooxanthellae. And then the coral bleach. So you can still see living tissue on top of the exoskeleton of the coral. And they can, if the temperature goes down, they can always take the algae back. So during bleaching event, it doesn't mean that they're dying. When the coral has a disease, the coral is dying, so you have the exposed exoskeleton. So what we have to do is we have to have a good eyesight and being able to see the living tissue up top of the exoskeleton, and we know that is bleach. You get used to it very easily. Well, Megan can tell you more about that. And then when you see exposed skeleton, you know it's a disease.
Davis, did you get in the water with the team at all and see this up close and personal?
I did. I got to dive with them. I got to float with them as well. They were very inclusive, and what was great for us being with those teams, whether it was Valera when they were when we were in the Sandy Key area, or down in Andros also with Dr. Sherman. I can't remember. Megan, were you on both of those voyages, or somebody was?
No,
maybe Taylor?
I was just on it was Taylor that was on both of them.
Taylor was the repeat offender. That's right. So what was great was it was really, we had a great homeostasis and a community while they were aboard, and both groups were aboard for multiple days, close to a week. And one of them, we watched the Oscars one night. That was really fun and stuff. But they're very inclusive, and really, luckily, I have a science background. I'm a biologist by academia myself, so that was part of the reason that I reached out to International Seakeeper Society, was because I wanted to pay my scientific community dues as a captain, and not just float people around from party to party on luxury sailing yachts and stuff. We did get to dive. It was hard work, which we're used to, which was good, right? But at the end of the day, we got to sit down and talk about what they did over the day and why they did it, and find out more about the data collection and the scientific background of what PIMS is doing for SCTLD in that region and stuff. So it's very inclusive, from being able to dive with them to being able to mix base 2B and really hear the story and the reasons as to why they're there and what they're doing there.
Yeah, that's nice you get to be so integrated in the research. What are some of the logistical challenges involved in organizing a research expedition on board a private vessel?
No. Go ahead, David. I'll tell you my side, and then you can tell your side. I think when you have a vessel like this one, like Andromeda, it's quite easy for us. It's much easier than when you have to go and book everything and the hotel and everything. Especially because, as Megan said, they were cooking for us. That is one thing that we don't have to worry about, go to the supermarket and things. So for us, it's mainly getting our materials and having the flights. But when you have an opportunity and you don't have to book boats and look for tanks and everything, just one item at a time, no, for us, it's super easy. I'm gonna say.
I mean, that's the goal. We want to make the science as accessible as possible. And if you can use your resources on something other than chartering a vessel, then that's great. What about from your perspective, Davis?
Yeah, logistically, on the front end, it was more difficult than while we were in the research itself. And I say that just because, unfortunately, I did not own the vessel. Had I owned the vessel, it would have been a lot more easier logistically. But there were, unfortunately, finances to take into consideration. I was all for donating the cruise time, the vessel, and then hey, pay for diesel. That was my give back, and that was my interest for what PIMS and what Seakeepers are trying to do, and we had the time to do that, but people that call those shots, wanted to go back and forth a little bit about finances and stuff, and that's fine. But I feel like the less talking heads you have in those situations, the better for the science itself, right? But at the end of the day, we got everybody on board, and I think that they got done what they wanted to do. And then, while we were in action, logistically, it was, we got into a rhythm that was great with the tank refills and the drop off at the sites. And at Sandy Key specifically, we were anchored right around the corner, literally. I mean, my partner and I could stand on the bow of the vessel and look to see if they had come up, surfaced, if we weren't actually over there, sitting there waiting for them in the recovery vessel, or the dinghy. Recovery vessel sounds a little bit more official. I like that. It was the first time that I ever did anything like this, and it was the first time that the organization I was working for did anything like this. I was the one who brought it to the table, and luckily they agreed to do it under the stipulations that they wanted to request. But then, as far as a work standpoint, physical work standpoint, the logistics were super smooth.
That's great. Did any of these expeditions that you all went on together, were there any charter guests on board for the duration of that, or was it just the science team?
Yeah, it was just the science team, and we wanted it that way. I think as far as what Andromeda is to the public, which is a luxury charter sailboat. They want to keep that separate from what's going on, because that would be a hard sale. I have a personal boat, and I would hope that if I were to be involved with PIMS, which I'd love to be involved with PIMS with my personal boat if I have the opportunity, which is actually in Dominican Republic on its way up here to Charleston, and we'll be passing through the Bahamas at some point. So keep that in mind. It's not as luxurious as Andromeda by any means, but we can probably find a spot for an air compressor on it, and the food will be just as good. I would love to, if places like PIMS and Seakeepers are interested, I'd love to bring some homies on board and say, hey, if we're going on this scientific expedition, do you want to join? The more the merrier kind of situation, because that garners awareness and interest, and then people helping people, and the more the merrier kind of situation, right?
Yeah. From the expeditions I've heard about that have had guests on board, it sounds like everybody does get to be really involved and get firsthand experience with that type of science. So you probably gain an awareness of, whatever organism or ecosystem you're studying that you wouldn't have. So that's a really cool thing to get to experience.
Even after the expedition or the voyage that we did with y'all, we would have guests on board, and we'd be over at Sandy Key snorkeling or diving or something, and we would say, keep an eye out for this, or this is where this is where they applied the base 2B and stuff. Let's take a look to see if there's any spread or anything like that. And the guests were super interested in that, and they felt like, even from afar, a part of that process.
Yeah,
that is so incredible.
Yeah, and David, we have to keep in touch. We do have a portable compressor, just so you know.
That's great. I hope you all get to go out together again this year. I want to get back into the science of SCTLD a little bit. Are scientists aware of the causes of SCTLD or why it spreads?
So we know that it's waterborne. We know that it just can go from one coral to the other through the water, and we know that some fish, like butterfly fish, they can be a vector transmitting the disease from one colony to the other. We know that in ballast water in the big ships, we can transport the pathogen. The problem with any coral disease, and we have many around the world, about 23, it's identifying what is causing the disease. It's very tricky. So corals have this mucus that is packed with bacteria and viruses and all these microorganisms. So when you go and you collect some tissue to try to identify what is causing this, you collect the water that has as well millions of microorganisms. You collect the mucus, you collect the coral, and then to try to say, to pinpoint and say, this is the bacteria or this is the virus that is causing it, it's very difficult. Actually, we only know for sure for one of the diseases. So what scientists have found that is the most likely cause is that it's a virus that affects the zooxanthellae, the symbiont, this algae. And that algae, when it starts to die, opens a window for a secondary infection that is caused by bacteria. And that's why we can treat the corals with amoxicillin, that is an antibiotic. So yeah, that's as far as we know. Yeah.
What are your hopes for this research moving forwards? Do you hope to find a cure or to just prevent as much of this from spreading as possible?
So PIMS right now, so in the Bahamas, there is a research permit regulation right now that allow us to treat corals, but we are not allowed to do any DNA related research. And that kind of doesn't allow us to find more different, do more research in terms to trying to see what is causing this or what can we do about it. But we have right now with PIMS in Colombia, where I'm from, a big project with other organizations, including 2 US universities and some Colombian NGOs and the Environmental Agency. And what we're doing is we are going to develop probiotics to try to stop the disease and to increase the corals' fecundity and growth. So we can stop applying antibiotics and having other means, especially probiotics, of stopping the disease. So we are having like these 2 different things. We hope that the DNA sampling ban that we have right now in the Bahamas change soon, so we can start doing more research that we can apply more solutions and not only treat and assess.
Well, that's exciting. And I know a big part of this too is raising awareness about the issue. Megan, do you all engage with local communities or stakeholders to inform people of this problem that's occurring?
We do like different presentations with different organizations. When, like, if we go to different islands, sometimes we'll do that. Also, where I'm based, Nassau, we do a lot of presentations. We work with a lot of captains, and we found that like showing the captains or showing the people that work on the water, you know, other captains and other fishermen and stuff like that, they'll trust the word that comes from the captain or the fisherman more. So that's been good in terms of like relaying that information to other people that are working on the water, dive guides, just whoever's working on the water. So we'll try to do that. We do a lot of science communication with blog posts, social media posts, and then when we have a section of PIMS called CCEA, which is Community Conservation Education Action. They have a lot of programs like Rise and Tides where they get high school students involved, and then we do internships. So when they do stuff like that, we would then come along to help the students to understand what's happening, what's going on, and try and educate them. So we hit a lot of different like age groups and different communities, different audiences, and that's, yeah, we try to do that more often.
And maybe to add to that, we have been going to boat shows around the Bahamas as well and having a stand there and talk about the disease. And we have a PCA that was shown in the national TV and in the cinemas as well.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Wow. So we've been talking a bit about the implications of this disease, but I wanted to just kind of take it back to basics and talk about why corals are important, why we care so much about saving them, what their health means for our ecosystems overall. So yeah, maybe Dr. Pizarro, you could shed some light on that for us.
Corals are the main builders of coral reefs. So think about the corals are animal again, but corals are like the trees of a big forest. So corals are the one that is structure and build up coral reefs. And coral reefs are a coastal ecosystem, so that means that it's close to a piece of land. It can be a continent, an island, and they start to grow there. And when you have a coral reef, you have a lot of different benefits to humans and other organisms. So what they do is they have very high biodiversity, so 20% of any marine life that we have, it's actually associated to coral reefs. And they have other benefits, like they protect the coast from erosion. So when you have a really good reef, if you have a hurricane, the hurricane force that comes with big waves and wind just reduces more than 25%. So the waves that you will get when you get hit by a hurricane or a storm will be minimized, and then you don't have the damage that now we're seeing because our reefs are actually very highly degraded. The other thing is like because of its diversity, the food security that we obtain from coral reefs, it's actually about 25% around the world. And of course, tourism. If anyone goes to the Bahamas, the blue waters that you get there, they're amazing. Like, they're really breathtaking, and this is associated to coral reefs. So all these benefits are what make coral reefs important, and they're connected to every single ecosystems. So if you have degraded coral reef, if we lose coral reef, we start losing mangroves, we start losing food security, we start losing coasts. So we will be the ones affected.
Davis, I know you said you have a bit of a background in biology. Was facing this kind of widespread disease a shock to you? Was it something you had seen before, and did it kind of change your perspective on corals?
Yeah, and more specifically, one of my degrees is in conservation ecology. So I'm all about conservation and preservation, and always have been. Luckily, it's a hobby. I feel like anytime, like I've sailed all my life. I love sailing. But there are times, anytime you're forced to do something, I feel like you're like, oh, dang. So I get to keep science as a hobby. So it maintains a very integral and interesting part of my life. But as far as coral specifically, I went in prior to meeting with PIMS and spending time with these people, maybe with an associate's degree in coral, and then I have a master's now because of these people. And I learned tenfold the amount that I know about coral. And actually, I was just relaying some information to some colleagues here at the Charleston Sailing School. That we were talking about coral and how I think that the temperature that it needs to exist is in the water temperature is about 72 degrees Fahrenheit. Is that correct, Doc and Taylor?
82.
82. Okay, good. Yeah. So you find that in the tropics primarily, right? But then there's this small patch of coral in the Sea of Cortez that we were talking about that people have sailed around. That's in a higher latitude because that peninsula of Baja on the Mexican peninsula, Baja Peninsula side, creates kind of an eddy from that Pacific gyre that brings down the cold water from Alaska and up in the northern latitudes, and the hot water, warm water stays in that area. So it's the highest patch of coral, and it's out of the tropics essentially. So then that's all stuff that I'm interested in now because of these expeditions that I did last year, it's great to feel like. My part is so minimal in all of it, but it's great to have the awareness and the wherewithal that things do need to be done. Unfortunately, the Earth is over its carrying capacity, and so I think that the anthropogenic factors are the biggest thing to combat right now for them. But PIMS is doing their dangdest to try to do that. So, and I really, really appreciate that. And I know a lot of other people that do also. So.
What do you think the public can do to help spread awareness of SCTLD?
Doing something like this podcast is a great way to do it. And that's a great way of adapting to the 21st century technologies and methods of communication that are so prevalent right now. And having presence on social media, Instagram, TikTok, if it's not going to be banned, things like that. That's how people get their information. We showcased that we did this expedition and this initiative on Instagram because, as my partner previously said, Instagram is I'm in my mid-30s. I think for my generation, Instagram is kind of our Google now. You want to find something out, you get on Instagram, you start scrolling, or you type into the search bar, and even Facebook too. You type in the search bar, SCTLD or Stony tissue coral loss disease, and it'll pop up with pictures, and it'll pop up with Taylor's face, and it'll pop up with the doc telling us about what we need to do. So those are great platforms to do it. But then having initiatives such as Seakeepers, pairing just wonderful nonprofits like that, getting people together that wouldn't normally get together. You wouldn't think that PIMS would be pairing with a lucrative luxury mariners club to combat this and to try to do something about it. But because of Seakeepers, we did. So it takes a village for sure. But the villages are there if you know where to look for them. So.
I like that a lot. Yeah. And what about the PIMS team? What do you all think are some ways that the public can help spread awareness about this?
I agree with everything Davis said. I think like social media right now, we're in that age where, you want to find something out, you're going to hop on social media. It depends on your age group, whether it be TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, whatever you want to use. And I do think collaborations like this is also key as well. Because like Davis said, we didn't know that we'd be collabing with a luxury boating brand, but that helped. That helped a lot. We were able to relay some information to Davis and to Devin, and I'm pretty sure that they've relayed that information elsewhere. I think also, as scientists, it's up to us to kind of help to make that information digestible, because even when I started, there's a lot of things I'm reading what is this? What does this mean? So it's kind of up to us to help to make that information more understanding for the public, because you don't want to lose them, or you don't want to lose their attention span. You don't want to lose that, because if you lose them, they're not going to hear anything you say. So I think it's a joint effort on everyone's end. We have to be able to relay information, and they have to be able to want to know. They have to be just as curious.
Yeah, and as amazing as published results are, that's something hard to just kind of tell anyone, hey, go read this paper about SCTLD. And yeah, I think the use of social media, things like podcasts, hopefully can bring some good awareness to these types of subjects. Yeah. What are your thoughts on this, Dr. Pizarro?
Yeah, no, I agree with what everyone says. I think that we can all, everyone can actually do something, even if they are in the middle of a continent and they don't go to the coast. Just learning about corals, about the different ecosystems that we have in the water, and understanding that anything that we do on land is going to affect the coast. That is important. I think learning, I do believe what many people have said, even David Attenborough, he has said the only way to take care or to care about something is when you learn and you love something. So when you learn, you're able to say, okay, I'm going to be accountable and responsible for doing this. So just if I always tell, when I'm giving a talk or talking to students or to anyone, is corals are really, I'm in love with corals. I can talk about corals all the time. But relating to corals, if you haven't been in the water, can be a little difficult. So if you ever been in the water and you've seen a coral, just go and talk about them. And then more people will be more involved, and probably they will just take more responsibility and just say, okay, I'm not going to do this because this probably will do that. So I think it's just learning. I always say, if you don't want to change your habits, or you don't have the means, you cannot do it for any reason, talk about corals and spread the word. That is a good point. That is something that you can do anywhere.
I think people are willing to have the conversation too. I think they just don't know sometimes where to find the resources. So
I'll piggyback on that if I may. It's tough on land. Nobody goes on an African safari to look at the trees, right? They want to see the big five. They want to see the big sexy animals, right? And coral is essentially, in my mind, the flora of the ocean, right? And then your sharks and everything are your fauna, obviously. But the way that Dr. Pizarro presents it makes it interesting and sexy, and makes people understand that how imperative having coral is. Those lions and wildebeest aren't going to exist in Africa if they don't have the trees to provide them food and nourishment and shade and shelter and whatever else. And coral provides that to the marine life that people are interested in. And you backtrack it and you say, well, coral is also the gut of the sea. it is what makes the waters in the Bahamas so beautiful. And it's about striking that interest and raising those expectations that people have for coral, not just being like, oh yeah, those are bright colors, those are cool, or don't touch that one, or you'll be burning for 2 days or whatever. There's so much more to it than that. We we kind of, I think it was in Andros, we got in a little bit of a turf war with some shark scientists because we dropped anchor in some area and they were like locating and tagging some tiger sharks and stuff, and they didn't want any noise to scare them off, and they were like feeding them, and actually saw a good bit of tiger sharks and stuff. But they came over and were like, hey, do y'all mind moving on, and Dr. Sherman was like, well, we have a permit from the country of the Bahamas to be here today and to conduct our research, and do you have that? And they kind of skidded off like, well, we just really appreciate it, scientist to scientists and stuff. And I stepped in as a captain and kind of backing up the team that I was then a part of, and said, look, like, we'll move on because we're nice people, but I want you to know that shark scientists do not have a monopoly on the ocean. There's enough water for all of us to do what we need to do, and that just kind of represents like that the stigma that the importance of coral and of these things needs to be out there, and it's not just something pretty to look at while you're looking for fish. There's so much more to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always would encourage people to go watch documentaries about corals as well. Chasing Corals is a great one, filmed by some students at CU Boulder, which is where I got my master's. So it's a really cool visual, and I think it helps people to understand it a little bit better and understand like these are thriving animals, or they should be. They're such an important part of our ecosystems, and they need a lot of help. Throughout my studies and my time, just I guess a little bit of background, I did my master's thesis on coral and zooxanthellae symbiosis, so mostly studying the ability for their algal symbionts to transfer from a healthy coral to a bleached coral. And I'm not gonna lie, I got a little bit discouraged doing this research, and over the years kind of seeing the changes that were happening to our coral reefs. So kind of similar to, I'm sure, what you face with SCTLD. But how do you stay optimistic about our coral reefs?
I have to say that it's frustrating sometimes. I agree. It's I've been studying corals for more than 20 years, and I've seen different diseases, right? I saw the start of white plague disease. There is another one. I've seen different bleaching events in different times, but having Stony coral tissue loss disease and the bleaching event that we had last year, it's sad. Some days it's like kind of going down and seeing all these corals dying and going from one month to the other, and then going to the water and having all these sea fans that were amazing, like healthy, die within a month due to the marine heat wave. It's sad, but at the same time, it's like, so what can I do? I can't do nothing and just like kind of go home and cry, or I can start just like kind of, okay, we need to do something. So we need to monitor and see how everything is changing and try to develop restoration, rehabilitation methods that we can use so we can help corals. And that is actually what keeps me, at least me, going. It's like, I need to do something because I want to feel helpful. And I'm doing this, and that is another thing that I'm doing this. Of course, I love corals again, but I'm doing this is for us. Like, we depend on coral reefs and corals. So if we do nothing, I'm sure because of the evolution of corals that they have been since almost the beginning of the life, like they have been for more than 4,000 million years, they will thrive back. They will just evolve, and we will have different coral reefs, different corals, but we, humanity, will be gone. So I'm always like kind of, I need to do something. If not, it would be just staying home, being depressed. And the other thing is I'm too old. What can I do again? Like I cannot start a new career. So yeah, I think that you have to keep going and do as much as you can for things that you love. I love my work.
It's great to have people like Dr. Pizarro and Megan working on things like this, because you can see how much they do love the work. Because the combating of it is very tedious. The base 2B is not easy to mix, and it's not easy to apply. And that's like the best proven combating of SCTLD right now. But watching them, do this and then wake up the next morning and do it all over again, and being excited to do it and happy about doing it, and feeling and knowing that they're making a difference, and seeing that they feel they make a difference is very inspiring.
Yeah, and I think that's all we can ask for too, and just to kind of thrive off of the optimism of the people that are really putting in the work to protect these ecosystems. And I love how you all mentioned just talking about coral reefs more, talking about SCTLD, sharing it with those around us. And I think we're pretty close to wrapping up our episode, but if we can maybe just brainstorm 2 concrete actions that anybody can do to help protect our coral reefs.
I will say try to not only learn, but try to be involved with local organizations that are working with anything related to conservation, climate change, anything related to what is actually going to help us keep going.
Yeah, I'd say it like that. And then, like you said, just talking about it, because you don't actually have to be a scientist or even have a degree to make a difference, You can learn like little steps. As simple as like switching your sunscreen. Like that is not a huge step, but it's easily accessible to do. It's easy to understand. It's easy to do, So just like talking about it and involving yourself.
Yeah, I think those are perfect examples, and there are some great eco-friendly sunscreens out there. I know there have been ones that are undergoing more testing, so I hope those continue to advance. We continue to see more products that won't be harmful to our coral ecosystems. Davis, what do you think? Do you have a concrete action that people could take moving forwards?
Not to contradict what y'all just said, this is me coming from my charter experience. I would say wear sun guards instead of sunscreen. Then we don't have to deal with sunscreen being in the water at all, or I don't have to deal with sunscreen staining the cushions on the vessels. But the other thing is sail instead of burning a bunch of diesel to bounce around. So get into sailing. Then you can utilize another glorious aspect that Mother Nature provides us, which is the wind. So.
And it seems more fun too.
And I want to add, Katie, that the collaboration that we had with Andromeda through Seakeepers, it just shows us like the importance of collaboration and partnerships. Like Seakeepers made those fieldwork so easy for us and so effective. Like it makes a difference. So we really appreciate that we can have that collaboration. We are looking for more, of course. We are always looking for more because we have to plan to go to the field to different places all the time. So we are looking for keep working with you and maybe Davis.
Thank you for throwing that out there. Hopefully, if you find yourself in that area, you all can get connected. And I think that's a good shout out to any vessels that are in the Bahamas region or the Caribbean that would like to take the PIMS team on board for an expedition. So hopefully we can continue to help you all get out there and do this really important work. And I think something I thought of just to throw in there for getting people to kind of understand what's happening to our coral reefs and raise awareness, I just want to encourage everyone to get a scuba certification or at least go snorkeling. I think being in the presence of these ecosystems is really how you understand them and really see how beautiful they are and how much life depends on them. So yeah, I would encourage everyone to get up close and personal. Wear your rash guards. Don't wear unsafe sunscreen and just go out there and see what you can see. So
I'd like to go down memory lane real quick and maybe share a couple of favorite memories from the expedition.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I'm gonna say that one day we jumped in the water and 11 spotted eagle rays were just coming up to us, and that was amazing. That was like kind of, we jump in the water, but like kind of jump just to see these guys. They are amazing, beautiful, cute creatures.
Megan, what is your biggest takeaway? Like, what do you remember the most?
The eagle rays were definitely like a plus, and honestly, like the cooking was like the best part for me. One of the best parts, because the food was so good. I don't know how that sounds to say, but it was amazing. Especially like, you're cold. Sometimes it's rainy. You have like a nice hot meal waiting on you that you didn't have to prepare when you're tired. So it was really nice and comfortable. And I just think, I honestly, like, one thing I always like is I like the community of it, where we just get to meet new people, kind of like sit down and talk and just kind of share different perspectives, because there are people who are so well traveled or have lived such a different life, and they have so many interesting stories. So I think that's always like a good thing. You always learn something new, even if it's like with the same coworkers that you've been working with.
Getting that time on board when you get to spend some close time together, that's so sweet. Yeah, that sounds amazing. What about you, Davis?
Yeah, both of those occurrences were quite memorable. Collectively, the community and the bonding and everything, but then seeing those spotted eagle rays, and it was really nice for my fellow crew and I, because we did get to sit down and feel a part of it. I'll reiterate that, and really connect with all that were involved. So that was a good break from the norm. The cooking and the catering and the chauffeuring, that was par for the course for us. That's just ingrained in our work ethic, because we had been doing it for so long. So that wasn't any skin off our back, if you will. But for me, the one thing that stands out, and I saw this the other day, and I need to give Will Green a shout out because of it. There is this turtle that at Sandy Key, who is very, very friendly. She's a little sea turtle, very pretty, and we named her Betty. And we had seen her multiple times already being in the Bahamas. Every time we would tie up at this float to either dive or snorkel at Sandy Key there with the guests, she'd come up and say hey. And for the past few months prior to Pim's arriving, I had been trying to get a selfie underwater with the turtle. And the first day, Will, being the photographer of the expedition, jumps in the water and has his big thing and just immediately produces this like perfect selfie with this turtle, right? And and I was like, and he showed it to me. I was like, "Dadgummit, man!" I didn't even tell him I'd been trying to get a selfie. I was like, "I've been trying to get a selfie with that turtle for months." And so then I was looking on PIMS and on Seakeeper's websites in preparation for this, and I had seen that he put that selfie up, and he said that the photo was taken by Captain Davis, and I was like, so I need to circle back up with him and be like, will you give me a shout out just to make me feel better? But that was the kind of like back and forth and the camaraderie that we had, and I know that we'll have going forward also, and PIMS continues to reach out, as well as Seakeepers and stuff, and I love that there's just this there are no curtains or walls between us, and we're always trying to figure out if we can circle back up and do what we need to do in order to keep the waters around for generations to come and everything in them.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly what brings everybody together. The more I talk to everyone who's been on expeditions, the science teams, and the boat captains, I just hear so many stories about these expeditions bringing people together, creating communities and friendships with people that you maybe would have never interacted with any other way in your life. So it's cool to see the kind of the power the ocean has to bring people together.
I'll shout out also, Will was the only male on either of these expeditions. It was all female scientists. For that, which was awesome to see, especially my partner who was female. That was really awesome to see for sure.
That's so cool. Yeah. We love to see the diversity in marine science. I think that's something very special about the field that is very intriguing. I love it. All right, so I think we can wrap it up here. Thank you all so much for chatting today. It was so incredible hearing about your experiences and just the kind of camaraderie that came out of your expedition together. So thank you so much for sharing about your time.
Thank you for the invitation.
Thanks for having us.
It was great to see everybody again.
Thank you to our guests from the Perry Institute of Marine Science for sharing their insights into stony coral tissue loss disease and the ongoing efforts to protect our coral reefs. And of course, thanks to Captain Davis Alford, whose passion for his ocean home has inspired other mariners to take better care of our seas. It's clear that these fragile ecosystems need our support now more than ever. In our next episode, we'll be shifting our focus from the warm waters of the Caribbean to the icy landscapes of Alaska. You'll meet a scientist at the forefront of groundbreaking research who has been capturing evidence of glacial retreat for decades with one special tool. For more information about our expeditions, including papers published from the data collected, head to the Scientist-Led Expeditions page on www.seakeepers.org. Join us next time on Seakeepers Voyages of Discovery, where we'll continue our journey to research, educate, protect, and restore. Until then, fair winds and following seas.